A very good morning to everybody, and a very happy Gandhi Jayanti to everyone who's been a part of the meeting of our masterclass today. So our masterclass topic is going to be about learn how to start a cybersecurity career in 2021. And our expert today is Mr. Gaurav Rout. A quick introduction about Mr. Gaurav Rout is that he has 5+ years of experience in the industry. If you look at the certification bit, CISSP is considered to be the epitome of most of the cybersecurity certifications, and including CISA, which is Certified Information Security Auditor. So you can see he comes with a plethora of certifications, the best ones in the market. And in addition to that, he's also a master's in cybersecurity from Georgia Tech. He works as a consultant in KPMG, and he's worked with big guns like Standard Chartered in the past as Information Security Analyst and various other roles. It's an honor and it's a privilege to have someone like him on our platform to share his experiences, his knowledge with us. And a quick note about the company. We are an edtech company, AntWak. We've started the cybersecurity channel like a year back, and today we have been growing tremendously. So stay back, start putting your questions on the chat, and we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. We'll definitely pick those questions up. But now I request you to give a warm welcome to our expert, Mr. Gaurav Rout. And without any further delay, I'd request you to take the stage. Welcome to AntWak, Gaurav.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Kaushik. I'll just share my screen.
Yep, sure. Absolutely. And yes, it's visible.
Thanks for the confirmation. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining this session. So today my agenda would be mostly, focusing around getting to know what are the queries and doubts from all of you who want to get into the cybersecurity space and who want to work in cybersecurity in their careers. So the content which I'm going to portray is not going to be that much in depth, but rather what I'm going to more focus on is the Q&A session, which is very much essential in my opinion. Because for everyone, the situations would be very different, and the questions that would be coming up, if we address those, I think that should bridge the gap between a student or an aspirant of a cybersecurity professional career who wants to go into this field. So I just hope that once we are done with the session, you would know that what are some of the required skill sets that are essential to get into cybersecurity, some of the most important tools and technologies which are essential to pursue a career in cybersecurity, and some best practices and career tips. So as he has already introduced me, so I would skip this particular slide. Yeah, so I have around 5 years of experience in KPMG. I have been for like last 1.5 years, and I have been working in cybersecurity risk assessments. So I bring my knowledge from my master's degree as well, which I did from Georgia Tech in cybersecurity. So from that perspective as well, I can contribute a lot towards this session to make you all understand better that how you can build a career in cybersecurity. So one of the basic thing which I want to cover before we get into anything, right? So the primary agenda in our cybersecurity, in any cybersecurity curriculum or in any organization, is that we have to protect the CIA triad, which we all know probably, since we are all cybersecurity enthusiasts over here. Most of us would be aware of what does that stand for. That is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Can I quickly get to know in the chat section, what do you understand by confidentiality? You're free to put your messages in the chat. What do you understand by confidentiality? Keeping information private or secure. Shailendra says yes. We don't have to share our password, Sumit. Okay, that is also one of the part. Hide data from unauthorized persons. Absolutely, Rakesh, that is correct. So these are pretty good responses, and all of these are accurate in my opinion. So confidentiality is nothing but is about ensuring access to data is restricted to only intended audience and not others. So what happens in organizations is that not every data is to be protected at the same level. Data is divided into multiple categories, and each data type is, has to be protected at a certain level, and not all the controls are necessary to protect all the data. So for example, something would be very much important for the C-suite, that is the CEO, CIO and all, which might not be necessarily be shared with the entire organization. So we might have to put different levels of controls for protecting the confidentiality of certain types of data. So all the folks who have mentioned in the chat, they are absolutely correct about the definition of confidentiality. So now, what do we mean by integrity? Can anyone tell me? What do we mean by integrity of data? Keeping information unaltered, Shailendra says. Anyone else? What do we mean by integrity of data? So we talked about confidentiality, which was protecting the information from disclosure. What do we mean by integrity of data? Genuinity, Subhash says. Keeping the data up to date. Yes, absolutely, Sai. So what happens is that integrity refers to maintaining the accuracy and completeness of data. So this integrity refers to, it can be unauthorized, unauthorized access to the data and then changing the data and its content, or it can be an accidental change as well. So sometimes what happens is that some of the folks in the organization itself, the trusted employees, they end up, affecting the integrity of data accidentally. So it might not be always a malicious intent to, affect the integrity of data. So this particular understanding is also very essential. So what do we mean by availability of data? Shailendra says information should be available all time to those who are authorized. Yes, you're absolutely right, Shailendra. This is very much essential. Only to authorized users, the information should be available. Anyone else who understands availability? Waiting for any other responses who understand availability. Never mind. So Shailendra is absolutely correct. Availability simply means information must be available when it is needed to the authorized users. So the reason which because of which I'm starting this from the CIA triad is that this is every organization's primary motive. And everyone is, struggling and, trying to ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data is preserved. So how do organizations ensure this? How do the organizations ensure that the CIA is preserved? So what they do is that they follow certain frameworks. It's a misconception in cybersecurity that cybersecurity is limited to hacking. If you talk to the students as well, right? And especially to the folks I have spoken to, many of them are like, and from outside also, it looks like, okay, the people would be sitting on thousands of computers and monitoring the network and trying to hack into other networks and whatnot, which is a common, scenario in movies as well. So that has put a wrong, kind of a picture in front of the people that cybersecurity is limited to hacking. But that is not the case. So what happens is that this is a framework from NIST. NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technologies, which is a US non-regulatory agency. So they have designed one framework, which is a common framework, which is followed across the organizations and across industry. There are other frameworks as well, but this is a famous one. This framework helps to ensure the CIA of data. So what it says is that first you identify what you need to protect. So there would be involvement of asset management, that what assets are you going to protect? What are the assets for which you have to ensure the CIA? Then there would be the business environment in which you are working in it. Then the governance around it. How are you going to ensure that the way you are protecting the assets is correct? Then the risk assessments. How much risk is there to the particular asset? That would depend on the asset value. How important is the asset for the organization? And risk management strategies. For example, how would you address if there is a particular threat to an asset? So this all involves in identify. Then comes the protect. So protection is nothing but putting necessary controls on the identified assets to ensure that those particular assets are protected from malicious threats. So it would involve data security, information protection and procedures, maintenance, and predictive technology. So the intent to show this particular diagram over here is that we are not limited to hacking. There are a lot of things involved in cybersecurity. First, we identify the particular asset and the threats. We protect against the threats and we protect the assets, and then we try to detect. So what could be the anomalies which can go wrong in the asset that could cause a threat to exploit a vulnerability? So this is a very key aspect of cybersecurity. Detecting at the right time is very much essential. Then once we have detected that, okay, we have an intruder in our system, or we have detected that, okay, we have malware in our system, what are we going to do about it? We would respond to it. Then the response plan comes into picture. We have to communicate to the users that, okay, your particular system has been compromised, or we have to communicate to the people whose data has been compromised. And then we put mitigation strategies to contain the particular event or incident. Then once we have, at that short point in time, we have countered the incident, then we move towards recovering. What we need to do now, we need to do a root cause analysis that why the incident happened. And then we have to do have a recovery and planning strategy. We have to get our backups ready. We need to put our backups. We need to see whether we are back to business or not. Everything is working fine or not. So this identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover is a process in this framework which has been defined to ensure that the organizations are in line with the cybersecurity best practices. I have something in the chat. Does a physical firewall play an important part in cybersecurity? Keshav, good question. A firewall does play an important part in cybersecurity. I would explain that in my next slide. That where does the firewall come into picture? But of course, firewall is not the only thing that is essential in cybersecurity. There are a lot of aspects. So let me go to the next slide. I think that would give you a better perspective of how actually organizations work. So if you see this slide, right, what I've done essentially over here is that what are some of the important teams that are essential to run an organized cybersecurity landscape? How organizations are, defining their cybersecurity landscape and protecting them against numerous threats out there. So usually speaking, so we defined, we just saw the NIST framework, right? We said identify, detect, protect, respond, recover. But in some way or the other, we have to implement this in the organizations. So in order to do that, what usually happens in some of the organizations is that they have multiple teams to do so. There's not a single guy who is just sitting on a computer and, doing every damn thing. That doesn't happen. Usually we see in the movies that, okay, this is how it works. Hacking, everyone is, one guy is there protecting and doing everything. That doesn't work that way. There are multiple teams across an organization, and they have different roles. And this I think this particular diagram, once I explain to you, should also give you a perspective of the number of career options which one can have. Usually we think that, okay, cybersecurity means we will just go and, protect, do maybe do penetration testing, or maybe we'll try to hack something, but that is not the case. So let's get into this one. So some of the organizations would have a governance and compliance team. What does a governance and compliance team do? To measure and ensure compliance to cybersecurity policies. So all these organizations, right, they are very much, from a regulatory standpoint, they are bound to follow certain practices, and if they don't follow that, they would be subject to fines. And for example, suppose there is a banking organization and they want to protect the customer credit card data and all the debit card data and customer private information, which is very much essential for protection, right? So if they do not do that, if they fail to comply to protect the customer's data, then they would be subject to severe fines. So in order to avoid those fines, there are governance and compliance mechanisms in place. So mostly in organizations, what would happen is that there would be a security policy. That security policy would be defining that how the organization is going to act in case of an incident, or how the organization is going to respond if there is a data breach. So that particular governance and compliance function might also have risk assessments. What does risk assessments entail? I would try to explain over here. So what happens is that whenever in an organization, an application is being developed from scratch, it is being developed to move it to production to fit to a particular business need. So what would happen is that there would be certain risk assessors who would be, again, cybersecurity professionals, who would be ensuring that the particular application is secure by design. that the necessary security controls are being put in place from the beginning of the application design phase. So that would be a separate team which would be doing that in an organization. Then there would be a compliance monitoring team. For example, you have an application which you want to put it on a cloud infrastructure or an internal infrastructure or at any database. There should be a compliance team which would ensure using any automated software or manually, who would ensure that the respective configuration of the system is correct, that the respective configuration of the system is in line with the security policy defined. And then after all these things are done, risk assessment is done and compliance monitoring is done for the particular system, there would be internal audits teams. These internal audit teams would ensure that whether the particular controls which are being put in place to secure a particular system, are they compliant with the particular organization's norms? Are they compliant with the particular regulatory authorities who govern the particular organization? For example, I would just give you an example. Again, in banking sector, we have something known as Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So this PCI DSS standard ensures that every organization who is dealing with card security, payment card data, need to have some basic practices in place. So what happens is that, for example, just to give you an example of my previous company, Standard Chartered, it had an audit, and the audit usually is done by all the big four companies like Ernst & Young, KPMG, PwC, and Deloitte. All these big four firms conduct audits. So in security audits, what they look for is that, are the particular organizations compliant with the PCI DSS standards? That would be one of the things which they would be looking for. Then, if does everyone understand what the governance and compliance team does? Are there any doubts regarding governance and compliance in a particular organization? Why this particular function is made? I'd be happy to address if anyone has doubts around governance and compliance. It's essentially a team which is ensuring that all the security policies are implemented in all the applications going live into production in an organization. Let me know, please, in the chat if anyone has doubt around it. Okay. Looks like everyone is clear. Then comes the next team, is vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So this is the team which is actually doing the hacking stuff. What they do is that there are a lot of frameworks out there. MITRE and ATT&CK framework is there, and then there is OWASP top 10 and whatnot. They would assess the vulnerabilities in a particular system or any particular system which is going live into production. It could be any application, it could be any database, infrastructure, SaaS solution, or anything. What these people would do is that this particular team, they would try to break that particular system. They would try to exploit the vulnerabilities. In what ways? Once they have assessed that, okay, this could be the vulnerabilities, and these are the common vulnerabilities in the market. Once they have done that assessment, and then when they have that kind of understanding, they might do in a black box way or a white box way. So what would happen is that in the black box testing, in black box penetration testing, what they might try to do is that they would not know what the controls are. So the governance and compliance team has ensured that the controls are in place. Now this team is trying to break those controls. In black box way, they would not know what controls are in place. While in white box testing, they would know what controls are in place, and they would try to exploit and break those controls. So this is the team actually doing the hacking stuff in any organization, usually known as the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing team. Then comes the code security review. So if you see, our hacking stuff is only limited to one of the section of cybersecurity in an organization. There are so many sections in an organization which are also a part of cybersecurity, but they don't come into picture when we look from the outside. We only think about hacking, but that is only limited to one particular section. Okay, so the code security review team, what it does is that when an organization is developing a code, right, internally developed or externally fetched from anywhere, a lot of good coding practices need to be ensured. For example, if a code is being developed without input validation in place, or maybe there are buffer overflow vulnerabilities in the code, there can be numerous such vulnerabilities in a code while the design phase itself. Usually what happens is that when the developers are developing a code, right, they don't have the mindset of how it can be broken. What we usually do while we are coding, okay, let's do for loop, while loop, if else, everything. Okay, whatever we have the algorithm, no matter how we are implementing it, the output should be correct. We don't pay attention that how the particular algorithm is flowing and how there could be some possible ways in which the particular vulnerabilities in the code can be exploited. So to ensure that that doesn't happen and the organizations are following secure coding practices, there is a separate team altogether for that. So either they do automated reviews for them, or there are or they do manual reviews. They go through the code line by line, literally, and try to understand where could be some of the vulnerabilities that can exploit the particular code. So this is totally different from hacking. Then there is something known as threat hunting. This particular thing, I think I have a question. What is the scope of cybersecurity policy governance department in India, considering there are not proper cyber laws? Okay, I would get to that question later, Amatya. Once I'm done with this particular section, definitely I would look into that question. So we'll get into the Q&A session soon, guys. Anyway, the content I have is not that extensive and not that much. The more important part is the Q&A section. So we'll get into it. So the threat hunting, what happens is that there are organizations which have internal networks among themselves. They share intel among themselves. Okay. So if there is a particular attack in any place or in any organization, they would share that particular data with other relevant organizations, regardless of competition or not, whether it is a competitor or not. Regardless of that, there are, good practices in place which enable this particular intel sharing with among organizations. Even the governments also from different countries share this particular intel with the organizations to ensure that any emerging threats are addressed ASAP and it doesn't affect the common public in that particular region or country or the employees of the organization. So there is a totally separate team who does this threat hunting. Then there is a team who does the malware analysis. So there are several tools in the market. One is Cuckoo, and there are some other tools as well, which are used to do this malware analysis. What happens in this particular team is that every system in an organization has an anti-malware software. Every database is also having an anti-malware software. So this is usually revolving around the endpoint security of devices and databases. So what happens is that this particular team ensures that firstly, all the anti-malware softwares are up to date, patch management is done properly, and then they would do the research behind the signatures of common malwares. So when the threat hunting team has, identified, okay, these are some of the common malwares going around in the particular market, which is targeting their particular business function. So when they have identified this, they would pass this information to malware analysis team. What would malware analysis team do? They would ensure that whatever newly emerging threat has come up, they would see whether it can be identified by their some common signatures in the code or the way they behave. Any such signatures in the particular new threat can be identified and can be fed into the anti-malware software. So that would ensure that the moment something goes wrong or a newly emerging threat comes into picture, that anti-malware software would be able to identify and eradicate it. So that is something this particular team does. Then there is one network security team. So what the network security team does is that the firewall part. That is one of the part of the network security team, as someone had asked, right? So again, firewall is one of the component of the network security team, which is again, a small component of the bigger picture. So these people would be the ones who would be configuring the firewalls. They would be ensuring what should be the policies on the firewalls. And they would also, work around the digital certificates. They can have some organizations also have the web security team, embedded in the network security team. And they would also maintain the CDNs, the content delivery networks, the proxies, and the honeypots. So this is basically on a network level, usually involving the middleware, the routers, the hardware of the network. That security would be in part of the network security realm. Then we have something known as a data leakage prevention team. So what the data leakage prevention team or the email security team does is that, as we know, right? So in an organization, every data is.
Yes, give it about a minute. He will be joining back. Please stay put. And whatever questions you guys have, you can start putting into the chat. Just to give you a brief, when it comes to cybersecurity, the course or the discipline has been evolving a lot. I think he's back online. Gaurav, you there?
Hello.
Hey, Gaurav.
Hey, I think I lost connection.
Yeah, sure thing. Please continue.
Just a second. Is my screen visible now?
Yep, it is. Just a bit of a disturbance in the voice part of it.
Okay, 1 minute. I think
Yep, it's clearer now. It's clear now. Yep, cool.
It's clear, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So, okay, I actually connected to my hotspot. That's why, because my Wi-Fi switched off.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
If it would be unclear, let me know. I would again switch back to my Wi-Fi. If
I think it's clear now. It's perfect now.
All right, thank you. So we were at the data leakage prevention and email security team, right? So as I was explaining, the data leakage prevention team ensures that no confidential data is going out of the organization. Then we have something as identity and access management. So what this team does is that firstly, we have to authenticate us in the particular systems. Every organization gives their laptops and personal devices to its employees. So the identity and access management team ensures that everyone has the right passwords and they are authorized to access that particular application or a device or anything like that. Even they would ensure that sometimes in identity and access management, they also involve the ID cards of the people, especially in the databases. That is also something which is looked at. Then apart from the ID card section, there are some privileged IDs which need to be managed in an identity and access management system. So what do we mean by privileged IDs is that when an application is developed, right, an application would have its normal users, and then there would be some backend users which would be involved in the development and support of the applications. So it is very, very easy to understand that those people who would be supporting the application from backend would have additional privileges than the normal users. So who's going to provide access and who's going to ensure that the right people have the right access? And who's going to ensure that the normal users do not escalate their privilege to get into higher access and higher privileged users? That's the identity and access management team which ensures that. So the key management of these particular applications, the access management and privilege ID management, everything comes into this particular team. Then there is one security operations center or incident response team. So this is usually in organizations, what happens is that there is a 24/7 team which works in shifts, and then they monitor the network and all the firewalls and all the web applications. They monitor that for any malicious activity. So these people are the ones who work in shifts. There would be people who will be working at night as well. And 24/7, the network is protected for most of the organized companies who have well-developed information security practices in place. So they would use quite a lot of tools. Those are security information and event management tools, they are called. Splunk is one very popular one. Many people do Splunk courses before getting into industry. And that is something very popular who want to get into the incident response team. And so basically when an incident happens, when an organization is attacked by a particular attacker, an outside malicious attacker, these are the people who are the first responders. This would be the team who would first identify it, and then they would work on it. Then there is a separate team known as the forensic analysis team. So there is a common understanding in the computer networks world that the data which is stored in the computers, it is known as hearsay data. It is not admissible in court. Why we say so is that because it can be easily modified. The computer, whatever data we have, if some incident has occurred, say a hacker A attacked a particular company and successfully led to a data breach. So how would you prove that the particular hacker A was the one who did that particular malicious act? It is very, very difficult to prove because such things are very, very easily replicable, and it can be easily modified in the computer world. So what happens is that this forensic team or the forensic analysis team is responsible to ensure that wherever the particular data was being stored and whatever is being fetched, first they start with the volatile data. That is whatever is stored in the RAM. Because anything which is stored in the volatile way, RAM, cache, or anything like that, is very much easily erasable just by switching off your laptop or switching off your endpoint device. So they would start with the volatile data, and then they would start preserving the evidences. These are the people who are basically doing the root cause analysis, that why a particular incident happened and who was the perpetrator who led to that particular incident. So one of the very important thing that they would want to ensure is the chain of custody, that from where the data has originated and where it has ended up. So that they can prove something substantial in the law, court of law. So these are some of the teams which are involved, and probably if you have any questions regarding these particular teams, you can post it in the chat and we would go through them again later at the end. Then moving forward, now I explained you that so many teams are there, right, in an organization. So how would you even get into such teams? That is a very big question which when we look from outside, that question comes often. So what happens is that, firstly, the required skill sets that is important for cybersecurity. Many people say that, okay, you need to learn this particular tool, or you need to know Kali Linux, or you need to know how the networks work, or how the subnetting is done, or whatnot. Those are not actually which are the primary key skills which are required for cybersecurity. So if you look the ones which I have highlighted in green, right? Curiosity to continuously learn the emerging technologies such as cloud, containers, microservices, blockchain, and etc. etc. There are numerous technologies which keep on evolving. The cybersecurity landscape is extremely dynamic. It changes every single day. Whatever you had done in the past, say 1 or 2 years back, it wouldn't be the same today. So you have to have the curiosity to continuously learn, which is very much essential for any cybersecurity professional. Then the other part is the mindset of breaking a system rather than making one. As I explained you earlier, right, I have several friends who are developers, and they do DevOps and all sorts of things, and they develop numerous applications, web applications, and databases. They code databases and whatnot. But the thing is, the majority of them, they forget that they forget that how the particular system can be broken. A cybersecurity professional should think, okay, this is how it can be made, but how it can be got into or broken into or breached. That is a mindset which many of the developers do not have these days, and that's what the cybersecurity professionals can have an edge by having that kind of a mindset. Then the risk mindset. Ask what can go wrong in every particular situation. This usually revolves around the common sense. Many people say, okay, they have this much experience and whatnot. Experience in many cases from a risk mindset perspective has no meaning, because what happens in cybersecurity space is that something which has happened in the past is not necessarily going to happen in the same way in the future, because threats keep on evolving and the attackers are one step ahead of us. So we need to be very much, we need to have the hat of the attacker, and we need to think that what can go wrong at every stage. So that is a mindset which is very much essential for a cybersecurity professional. Then the other thing is that ability to narrate complex topics in a simpler manner. So this particular thing is so much important. I would tell you in a situation, I will just give you an example. What happens is that so far in business, IT used to be the backbone of all the particular business functions, and whatever you want to implement in today's world, IT is there. Information technology is the backbone. It is enabling you to do your business practices and generate revenue for your company. However, many a times information and cybersecurity is looked at as a hurdle. Many of the CIOs and C-suites and all the VPs and directors in a company, right, who are business oriented and who want to make money, they do not pay as much attention to cybersecurity as they do to their normal business practices or to IT. Even the IT in an organization looks cybersecurity as a hurdle or a roadblock, because nobody would like it, right? If they want to implement an application and somebody, a cybersecurity professional, and is coming and telling them how they should design the particular application, and they cannot go live into production until they have fixed these particular issues, nobody is going to like that. So what happens is that it becomes very difficult for cybersecurity professionals, as well as especially the CISOs of the companies, to get the budget to fund their cybersecurity practices. So how they would get the budget in an organization? What they do is that they have to narrate the complex cybersecurity topics in a very simple manner to the business. Then only you can, sell that this is the value this particular thing is bringing to the organization. So it is very, very essential that you narrate complex topics in a simple manner. Then comes the basic understanding of cybersecurity jargons and computer networks. As you can see, this is a good to have, not a must have. If you know the cybersecurity jargons and computer networks stuff, then it's great. But the 4 beginning stuff which I have mentioned are very much essential and are a must have. Then understanding of commonly used tools such as Kali Linux, Wireshark, Berksuit. This is also good to have, not a must have. And then basic understanding of regulatory requirements such as PCI DSS, local laws, HIPAA, GDPR, and all those laws. This is also a good to have requirement, not a must have requirement, because all these last 3 things you can learn along the way. This is something you have to inculcate, and you have to build your mindset to think in this particular perspective, in a cybersecurity professional mindset. These are some things, the yellow ones, which you can, build along the way. And the moment you have curiosity, all these things would be very easy to implement and do. Moving on, how would you acquire these things? So, of course, one primary way of acquiring these skill sets is education. So you can consider taking subjects such as network security during your undergrad, or you can consider doing a master's degree, because education goes a long way. Of course, experience matters, but education, gives a particular background and gives a particular baseline to you to understand the particular concepts which I just explained earlier, and builds a kind of a problem-solving mindset, which is very much essential. Then you can go for certifications. Consider taking certifications such as CompTIA, Security Plus, SSCP, or some cloud certifications such as AWS and Azure during your college days. So you can definitely, so when I was in college, I was not aware that, okay, we could do certifications. I was always focused on internships and, projects and whatnot. But there are a lot of certifications which you can do while being in college. And those things, add a lot of value when you're going for an interview. Then the other thing is that you can participate in hackathons, capture the flags, bug bounty events. There are numerous things happening around the world on Google. Just you have to Google it. Hacker Rank, Hacker Earth. They do a lot of capture the flag events and a lot of hackathons. You can get, so you need not be an expert in that, but you might want to, participate in it to try to understand that how these particular people are solving challenges and solving, big problems. So that kind of mindset would be built by participating in such hackathons. And of course, which is essential, of course, in a certain way, that you have to have some experience, which you can gain through internships. So internships need not be cybersecurity specific, because I understand when you are in college, it is very difficult to find an internship, let alone be it in cybersecurity. So any IT internship which gives you a basic understanding of the networks, or how the IT infrastructure works, is a very good advantage, and is a very essential tool to learn how an organization is functioning. So for getting internships, LinkedIn is the best platform, in my opinion, which you can utilize to connect with as many people as possible and getting to know if there are any internship opportunities over there. So these are some of the things. I know these are very generic topics, but I would like to go into much more in depth and in detail in Q&A session, because there I will be able to address some of the personal things, personal queries which people have, and which would be much more specific. So Kaushik, probably you wanted to do something in between.
Yep. Thanks, Gaurav. I'll just take over the screen sharing, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, guys, I hope you guys are finding the session productive, because one thing that I was actually saying when Gaurav was kind of reconnecting was that cybersecurity in today's day is becoming very vital. That it started off with people not knowing what that field means, to today it being $1 trillion industry. You don't believe me? Google it yourself. In the next 3 years till 2025, at least the next 5 years, I'd rather say, that the amount of money that is going to be invested in this infrastructure is going to be ridiculously expensive. So considering those things in mind, and based off what Gaurav had covered 3 slides before, explaining different domains within cybersecurity, we have designed a program to cater such requirements from the industry bit of it. So the program that we run is called a Cybersecurity AntWak experiential program. It runs on as a course over 16 weeks, of which 12 weeks contains core topics, which I'll be discussing in the next slide. And then there will be 4 weeks of soft skills, CV preparations, and mentoring sessions. We are very comes to classes, you'll just be doing 3 classes per week, one on Saturday, two on Sunday. The one additional class on Sunday would be something around professional skills, wherein we'll be learning about stakeholder management, presentation, interview, problem solving skills, and things like that. The highlight about some of the highlights of our course is that it's done not through teachers or academicians. It's rather done by industry professionals who've been there, done that. So experts like Gaurav, we have different experts coming from different domains who come and teach. They're going to be 10 plus experts who are going to be on this platform. In addition to that, none of our classes are pre-recorded. All of our classes are live classes. So you get a chance to talk to these people in real time. In addition to that, some people who are already in the industry, it's easier for them to get a grasp of such things. But there are some people who are not from the industry. For them, we'll be giving pre-reads so that you feel more acquainted when you get into the system. Every topic that we cover follows a tool, and there are projects which helps you validate what you understood. So give you a brief about what we are covering in the course of 12 weeks when it comes to the core topics. This is the first half. So we start off with introduction to cybersecurity and a very ground level. And then we all of our labs are done on VirtualBox because we want to ensure that you need to understand virtualization. Because in today's day, as a cybersecurity professional, doesn't matter what domain you get into, reverse engineering and malware analysis has become quite important. And all these can only be done within a virtual environment. So we start off with a very basic VirtualBox and running Kali OS, because Kali OS comes with a lot of pre-built tools that makes everybody's life easier. And as explained, network security is a backbone for most of these domains, because unless and until you can't understand network on a ground level, trust me, understanding the complex concepts becomes much more of a challenge. So if you see, we start off with network security. We go with cyber attacks, wherein you'll be learning about malware, reverse engineering, and also running phishing campaigns. In addition to that, you'll be learning about web application security, wherein we'll be covering tools like Burp Suite and Zap. And then you'll be doing incident management, as explained by Gaurav, that it's put forth by NIST with some best practices, as in if your company gets hit by a breach, how do you handle that? What are the best practices? So incident management majorly cover those things. Obviously, when a security event has happened, you need to understand how that event happened so that you can prevent such events in the future. And that's where forensics comes into the picture. And we'll be learning tools like Foremost, Autopsy, GHEX, and EXIF. In addition to that, learning about frameworks and compliances is very important. So GRC lets you know the best practices from NIST, from ISO, from GDPR. So just to give you a brief about GDPR, is pretty much your Privacy Protection Act, which is majorly followed in the European continent. ISO is majorly done for ISMS, is Information Security Management System. And then the last 3 topics that are majorly covered is the identity and access management, cloud security, and then SIEM and cyber threat intelligence. So for SIEM, we covered this tool called IBM QRadar. And all these span across a time frame of 12 weeks. And this is a limited time offer that we're running right now. So you get an option to either you have money, so you could pay up front 59,999. We have EMI options available around it. If you complete the course and don't get a job, amount will be refunded. There are certain terms and conditions that do apply. But at the same time, if you can make a 29,999 payment upfront, we are okay with that as well. And once you get placed, there'll be an arrangement of some sort of money that we'll get back from you once you get the job. So we are running a promotional discount today. I have already shared the link on the chat multiple times, and I am going to do that right now again. So you guys can check this link. The registration is not really going to cost you anything. Just register using this link, and then one of our academic counselors will get in touch with you. And if you have any further queries, Sumit, if the site is not working, just try the URL by itself. I just tried to open this right now. It's working fine. So just try the URL by itself and see if it doesn't work, then let me know. I'll share it with you separately. But what I would urge is that cybersecurity is having a great amount of impact these days. And with a lot of data breaches happening, could you believe that India is standing rank 3 on cyber breaches this year? So between 3 and 5 rather. So there is a great demand of skills that is required. And as Gaurav has immensely put on so much of information in a very concise manner, I think you should hit the rod when it's hot. And this is the time, guys. So try to, okay, let me check. Uh, Kailash, it's impossible that it would say forbidden. It would, so if you're trying it on your phone, might be limitation. So try it on your browser. But then if you have any issues, please put it in the chat and I will address the issues. On the other hand, thanks for listening out. Himanshu, over to you. Thanks. Sorry, Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you, Kaushik. So, guys, now mostly I would be going to the Q&As, which is very much essential. I know because a lot of questions, even people reach out to me on LinkedIn as well with a lot of questions, and I try to help them out. So, firstly, I would go through the questions which have been already posted in the chat, and I would try to address them one by one, and then probably we can take new questions. So, Amatya has asked, what is the scope in cybersecurity policy governance department in India, considering there are not proper cyber laws and data protection policies in India? Is there more scope abroad like in Europe? So firstly, our ITA Information Technology Act of 2000, right? It does cover some of the privacy requirements in India, Amatya. However, if you are looking from, when you say a scope in abroad, when you're saying scope, I think I'm guessing that it is from a job perspective. So in governance, there are a lot of companies in India who function in Indian regulations, right? If there is a banking organization, it has to adhere to the RBI. If there is any organization which is functioning in India and dealing with any kind of payment card data or any kind of data related to money, they have to adhere to RBI and Indian laws. So definitely we would have to have some governance mechanism which is ensuring that, right? And there are a lot of international companies in India which process the data of European people and of US people. For example, if there is an organization, so for example, there is an organization in India which is processing the data of European people, they have to adhere to GDPR. Even though they are physically located outside of Europe, that doesn't mean that they don't have to ensure the governance policies revolving around the people of Europe. And then likewise, if somebody is handling, if there is a hospital or if there is a medical facility or medical organization in India which is handling the data of people of United States, then they have to adhere to HIPAA, which is Health and Information Portability and Accountability of Act of the US. And if they don't adhere to that, if there are not policy governance mechanisms to ensure that we are adhering to that particular laws, we would be subject to fines. So all these international companies in India provide a lot of opportunities for governance roles in India. So and especially quite a lot of Indian companies also have to adhere to PCI DSS and all these compliance norms, right? So I think it's nothing like there is more scope in abroad or India. I think there's a lot of scope in India which has to be just untouched or is not visible from outside, but there's a lot of scope in governance in India as well. I hope that addresses your question, Amatya. Then Kumud has asked, what would be your advice for a 12th grader? So Kumud, it's great if you are in 12th and you are interested in cybersecurity from now onwards, which is very, very nice, to be honest. My advice to you would be that, am I audible, guys?
Yep, you are.
Okay. So my advice to a 12th grader would be that firstly, you can look forward to engineering courses such as computer science or maybe electronics and communications and such, which revolve around networks and computers and give you a basic understanding of all these things. And there are certain, colleges which provide network and cybersecurity specific courses as well. And the AntWak course that just, Kaushik mentioned, that is also a fantastic course for you, which you can look forward to. So these are some of the things as a 12th grader you can try. And since you have so much, age in your hand as well as time in your hand during your college days, once you get into a college, you can parallelly, try to do some certifications and try to learn from, websites such as, there is a website known as Cybrary, which is a fantastic website to, teach and to learn about, cybersecurity things. So I think you can go through those websites and try learning from them. And of course, since you are going to enter college, I think already build your LinkedIn profile and try connecting with as many people as possible to learn and to know from their real life experiences that how they can gradually proceed in cybersecurity. Then we have a question: what are red team and blue team concepts in cybersecurity? Okay, Himanshu. So red team is the one usually who tries to, attack or breach the system, and blue team is the one usually who tries to defend the particular system. So that's just in simple terms. Okay, so red team would be, as I explained in the domains, right? Multiple teams I explained. The vulnerability assessment and penetration testing team, the one which are hacking into the system, can be considered under red team, while the blue team will be the ones who are ensuring that the necessary controls from a cybersecurity standpoint are in place. For example, the risk and compliance team, which I explained in one of the in my previous slide, that would be considered under blue team. So once they are, one team is defending, the other team is attacking. The attacking team is red, and the compliance team is kind of the one who is ensuring all the controls are in place, can be considered as a blue team. Then we have a question from Keshav. Is it important to have knowledge about programming languages in order to? Okay. So I'll be very honest with you, Keshav. I did not have extensive knowledge of programming languages when I got into cybersecurity. And of course, it's very good that if you have a background of, say, for example, Python or maybe some web application languages to get into cybersecurity. But as I showed you, right, there are so many different domains in cybersecurity. For cybersecurity risk and compliance, you do not require programming language knowledge at all. What you require is the ability. Mostly what is required is common sense. You have to identify what a particular risk can be in any particular situation or any given problem given to you. So that is much more important than learning programming languages. Learning programming languages would be essential when you want to go into code security review, maybe when you want to get into penetration testing. But it is not essential for risk and compliance. It is not essential for incident management roles, because there is something you are dependent on the tool and not dependent on the programming language. So no, it is not true that you require programming language as a must to get into cybersecurity. Then we have a question from Mahesh, which is okay. Sorry, Manideep had asked what are jargons. Okay, by jargons I meant that this some common terminologies of cybersecurity, right? For example, how would you get to know that what does need to know principle mean, or maybe deny by default? These are some of the things which are used in cybersecurity to get to know. So when you are speaking to a cybersecurity professional, right, they would use a lot of these kind of jargons and words which are commonly used in the industry. In order to understand those things, you would have to get to read more. You have to do some certifications which teach you that, maybe do an AntWak course which teaches you that. That's the way you would get to know what are the common terminologies which are used in the cybersecurity space. Mahesh asks, why is Linux important in cybersecurity? So here's the thing, Mahesh. What happens is that Linux is open source, and Linux provides certain capabilities, such as the Kali is also based on Linux. These capabilities are not, openly, readily available in Windows platform. What happens is that Windows is very much user oriented. It has made everything very simple so that you don't have the granular control that you have in Linux. So using Linux commands and the Linux, terminal and all that stuff, you get a lot of granular control, which is not, easily possible to get it done in Windows. That's why a lot of servers are based on Linux, and a lot of analysis is done on Linux systems. That is why Linux is, very important for cybersecurity professionals who are especially in, again, VAPT and all these domains, very technical domains, not for governance and compliance. What is the requirement to join the blue team? Hisham asks. Okay. So blue team, if you understood correctly, then the blue team is the one of the governance and compliance team, the internal audit teams, the teams who are ensuring that the security controls are in place. So firstly, probably what you might want to do is that maybe they might not give you risk assessments or such kind of work directly when you get into an organization. Okay. What you can start by doing is that you can get into the operation stuff, and then you can slowly creep into the blue team. Because if you think about it, the blue teams are the one who are, making the policies. They are defining the controls which should be in place. So definitely these people have to have some experience and hands-on experience. So usually what people do is that they get into roles such as incident response or networks or something like that, and then they slowly move up the ladder and try to get into the blue team, which is the defensive team. So it is easier to get into certain other roles such as networks, firewall admin, and all these roles compared to the ones who are doing risk assessments and audits. So probably what you can do is that once you are done with the basic technical requirements of getting into an organization via some incident response or some other team, slowly you can move towards blue team by doing certifications such as C risk from ISACA or CISSP from ISC Square, which are very very good uh, certifications to get into blue team. Then can someone with a non-technical background excel in this industry? Absolutely, Keshav. Because if you think about it, in big fours, especially KPMG, EY, all these big fours, right, Deloitte and Ernst and Young, many of the professionals are coming from chartered accountancy background and life sciences background, or they are from BCA, MCA, and all that kind of background. Okay, non-technical, when you're saying, it could be like, okay, commerce background folks. There are a lot of folks from commerce background which are not from typical computer science background. Why? Because as I said, auditing doesn't require you to have technical knowledge. The amount of technical knowledge that you require to audit controls can be gained along the way. It is not necessary to have technical background of coding and all that stuff to get into this particular industry in Excel. A lot of partners in our industry, right, in Big Four, the partner is the one who's like the highest position in the industry. They are not all of them are not technical. They are coming from various, many are from policy and law background, many are from commerce background. They are not all from computer science or technical backgrounds. So yes, it is possible. Then is doing MS in cybersecurity specialization worth it for someone who wants to get a job in the domain in a foreign country? Amatya. Okay. So directly from here, if you're trying to apply into a foreign country, of course, it depends on which country you are trying to apply. It is very difficult to get, direct jobs from here in the US market. It might be easier into in Singapore. It is still easier. It is easier in the Europe, but it is very difficult to Europe due to visa norms and restrictions. But this is very subjective, Amatya. You need to think that what exactly country you are targeting and whether you require an MS or not in the long run. So an MS is going to benefit you in the long run, definitely, but it is not something which is essential to get into cybersecurity, to be honest. Then which department of these do you think better to work in, considering the pay and growth scope in the company? Okay. Any department has ample growth opportunities. There is no one set path to become a CISO. If anyone wants to come into cybersecurity, I would assume that they want to become a chief information security officer someday, or a chief technical architect or security architect someday. So if you are dreaming for that, it doesn't matter from which particular domain you are coming, because money would follow you automatically over there. It would not matter in which particular field you are. If you are in risk assessment, you can be a chief risk officer in an organization going down the line. So everything has equal opportunities, Amatya. It's just a matter of taste and what you want. I hope I'm still audible, Kaushik.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. We'll just pick another couple of questions, Gaurav, because we just have another event following up in the next 10-15 minutes. So we might need to wrap up in the next 3 or 4.
I see. Quite a lot of questions are there.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Guys, so we just want everybody to ask questions. So people with more than 2 questions, if we've answered, don't mind. We want to give everybody a chance. So we'll just try to pick, Gaurav, we'll just pick 2 or 3 questions and we should call it.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. You can pick any of those questions, just 2 or 3, and we should be done.
Okay. So Rakesh has asked, will companies consider recent grads without prior IT sector experience for SOC analyst roles? Okay. So what you need to demonstrate in an interview, Rakesh, is that if you get into an interview, firstly, getting into an interview would be, it feels like a tough nut to crack, but it is very easy if you reach out to people on LinkedIn. You have to have a demonstrated, capability in understanding all these things, and you should demonstrate that you have worked on it. How you can do is that if you go for SOC analyst roles, Rakesh, if you go and do a Google on Splunk, right, they have an open course which is readily available for anyone to do it. Do it. If you have that, you can demonstrate that in an interview. If you have good understanding of networks, maybe go and do a CCNA certification, and probably that would add value in your interview. So these are some of the things where you can demonstrate your knowledge. And once you have done that, I think it is very easy to, get into SOC analyst roles as well. Then Sumit has asked, global certification is mandatory for getting job in cybersecurity. No, it is not a mandatory, Sumit. You can get to know the particular knowledge from your education as well. Certifications are not a mandate. What happens is that in Big Four, in Big Four, what happens is that the ones which are oriented towards consulting, they promote their employees to get certifications because they are able to sell their employees to the clients very easily if they are certified. If you are in a typical organization such as a banking sector or something like that, they also have regulatory requirements to have certain number of certified professionals in their domains to demonstrate capabilities. These are there, but again, this is not a necessary or a mandate. Of course, getting certification gives you a leverage and an edge over in the market over other peers. So I would recommend doing certifications. Then we have, so is there any certain grade or percentage to join cyber after that? Is there any certain grade and percentage to join cybersecurity? No, Vishwant, no, there is nothing like that. Usually the companies have the normal joining requirement of minimum 60% and above. All these things are not required, to be honest. What is required is that your understanding of the cybersecurity domain, and then you cracking an interview, you getting an opportunity for interview, which can happen via LinkedIn very easily. So a percentage in marks have no meaning over here. Is it good to do master cybersecurity abroad? See, would like to connect to you, discuss further shortly. Sure, we can connect later, Kamod. You can send me a request on LinkedIn. So how will be the career growth? I think Manideep, careers I already covered in my particular slide number 6, where all the domains I have demonstrated, so you can go through it. Hi, sir. I'm a BTech mechanical graduate with no experience in cybersec, but I'm interested to pursue a career. So how can I start, as I have already lost? Okay. Subhash, probably if you want to get into cybersecurity, right, you can, since you are from mechanical background, look into SCADA systems. It is an emerging thing in India, actually, because electronics and electrical are also getting very much popular in India from cybersecurity standpoint. So soon all these things are going to be integrated with computer. And I think SCADA systems is something where you can look at and get into much more cybersecurity part of that. Since you have mechanical background, I'm just suggesting you that. Of course, you can get into normal cybersecurity of normal of the normal computer systems and normal networks as well. And probably how you can do that is by doing some certifications. So Kaushik, I hope
I think Gaurav, thank you so much for have come to AntWak's platform and have shared valuable knowledge because I think similar to your experience, there was a point of time wherein I was going through a crisis wherein I would try to reach out to kind of people to get more knowledge, but then it wasn't easily available. But then I think whatever you've put on today, it has kind of been of tremendous help for at least people who are wanting to get into the industry. And thank you for patiently answering at least 70-80% of the questions beginning from the session. So that's actually pretty good. On the other hand, guys, the recording will be available in the AntWak events page in a day or two, maximum 3 days. And once the recording is available, you can always go back and see it for yourself. Till then, Gaurav, once again, thank you so very much to have come on our platform, to have shared our knowledge. We look forward to hosting more events with you in the near future.
Thank you so much, Kaushik, for hosting me, and thanks everyone for joining. And you can definitely share, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to help and address your questions.
Yep. And guys, thank you so much. You have a great day. Take care of yourself. And once again, Gaurav, thanks a lot. Take care of yourself too. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.